promised I'd never tell anyone, but there are nights when I feel like something inside me is screaming to get out, and if I don't speak up now, maybe I'll cease to be myself. I bought the house in Concord, New Hampshire. I moved into the house at the beginning of October. It was old, over a century old, full of darkened wood and a persistent smell of coal dust. Those opportunity to renovate ads always hide something. But I needed a fresh start, a recent divorce, sleepless nights, and that suffocating feeling that nothing made sense anymore. The house seemed like a chance to breathe again. But from the first step inside, I felt the opposite. The air was too heavy, as if it had been stored for decades, compressed behind closed windows. And there was a silence that wasn't just an absence of sound. It was a silence filled with something, as if someone were holding their breath with me. I tried to ignore it. I spent the day opening windows, dusting, imagining what the house would look like after the renovations. But every time I turned around, I felt that same irritating sensation, that someone small, very small, was watching me close to the ground. That night, I slept on the makeshift mattress on the living room floor. The house creaked, like any old house. But there was something in the pauses between the creaks. A cold, almost human interval. I fell asleep late, listening to the wind scraping the branches against the windows. I woke up around 2 a.m. and something was wrong. The air felt colder, as if the temperature had dropped only inside the room. My breath came out in short, condensed gasps. And there was a strong smell. A smell I hadn't smelled before, damp, ancient earth, the kind you only find in forgotten basements. I thought it was paranoia. I stood up slowly, feeling the floor creak beneath my feet. The lamp flickered, once, twice, as if hesitating to stay lit. And then I heard it. Steps. Soft, short steps. Like those of a very young child. Lose, lose, lose. Coming from the hallway, heading towards the room. I froze. My whole body seemed to stiffen, as if my muscles had forgotten how to move. The footsteps stopped right at the door frame, at a height where the lamp's light didn't reach. There, at the edge of darkness, I saw a shadow. Short, narrow, motionless. My eyes were burning because I was afraid to blink and have it get closer. But when I finally mustered the courage to turn on my cell phone flashlight, nothing. Empty hallway. Absolute silence. The smell of earth had vanished. I returned to the mattress, trembling. I convinced myself it was the tiredness, the change, the old house. I tried to laugh at myself, but my voice sounded strange, shaky, as if it belonged to someone else. Before falling asleep again, however, I heard a low whisper, coming from the very hallway where the shadow was. "Don't shut me in." The sentence pierced me like ice. My heart pounded so hard I thought I was going to faint. I couldn't answer. I couldn't get up. I just stood there, motionless, feeling my hands sweat and my vision throb at the edges. That was my first night in the house, and even today, I still think she was trying to let me know I wasn't alone. I know it sounds crazy, but when the construction workers arrived that morning, I was already certain that there was something alive inside that house. Something waiting. The work began on the second day. 2 bricklayers, Hank and Morales, experienced men, accustomed to old houses in New Hampshire, said the structure was good, but there were odd things in the insulation of the walls. I paid no attention. I just wanted to turn that place into a home. But a few hours later, they called me. "Ma'am, take a look at this," Hank said, in the most serious voice I'd heard from him all day. In the hallway leading to the master bedroom, they had torn down part of the old wall covering, and behind it, the load-bearing wall was gone. There was space, a narrow space, about 40 centimeters wide, like an invisible corridor that shouldn't exist. A gap between walls, closed on all sides, serving no purpose whatsoever. Hank slid the flashlight inside, and the light reflected off something that made my stomach churn. Designs. Many drawings, made with crayons, charcoal, even fingernail scratches. Children's drawings, crooked and repetitive. Small stick figures without eyes. Circles that looked more like holes. Hands. Lots of hands. Morales swallowed hard and said, "This place doesn't look as old as the house." Further inside, there were marks. Not of rust or wood, but of fingernails scraping, scratching, as if someone, a child perhaps, had tried to get out of there. The ends of the lines were fresh, as if someone had scratched it not long ago. I moved my face closer to see better, and a smell rose from that space. A damp smell, of dust mixed with something more organic. Something reminded me of the smell from the previous night. Wet earth, but not garden earth. Earth from underground. Morales found something in the corner. A small, old cardboard box, warped by the damp. Inside were a child's shoe, too small a size, a headless rag doll, a bent spoon, a drawing with two figures, one tall, one very short, almost glued to the wall. Hank slammed the box shut with a hurried snap. "I don't like this," he murmured. "It feels recent, like someone's been here for the last few months." That hit me like a cold sting. Because, according to the real estate agency, the house had been empty for 7 years. I tried to ask if that was common, if old houses hid spaces like that. Hank just made a vague gesture, as if he didn't want to commit to the truth. "Let's shut this down," he said. "It's better to leave it as it was." But when I heard that phrase, something inside me trembled. To close. Close what? I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal, but the feeling of being watched grew stronger with each passing minute. Always close to the ground, always at a child's height. When the construction workers left, the house was silent again. But now, there was more weight in the air, as if the open space had released something. And that night, as I walked to the bathroom, I swear I heard something coming from the dark gap between the walls. Loss. 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 Short steps, keeping up with mine. I wanted to believe it was all in my head. But you know when fear has weight, when it touches your skin like something real? Well, that night, it did. After the construction workers left, the silence in the house changed. It was no longer just an absence of sound. It felt like a presence breathing alongside me, adjusting to my rhythm, as if waiting for me to be alone. I tried washing my face, cooking something simple, ignoring the hole between the walls. But every time I walked down the hallway, I felt a shiver run up my neck and down my spine, like tiny fingers dragging across my body. At 3:17 a.m., exactly that time, the bathroom light flickered for the first time. A sharp crack, then another, and then that familiar electric hiss, but too long, as if something were touching the bulb from the inside. Meanwhile, the smell of wet earth returned, this time stronger, as if it had been carried from the crack in the wall to the bathroom door. I smelled this odor before any sound, and yet I stood still, motionless. My heart was beating so fast I could hear the blood in my ears. That's when the steps began. Loose, 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 small, short. It's as if someone were walking with their weight in the middle of their foot, not on their heel. That sound of a child walking slowly, shuffling along a little. They came down the hallway, turning towards the bathroom, and I stood there in front of the mirror, staring at my own trembling reflection. Loss, loss, loss. When they stopped, it was as if they were right behind the door. The wood vibrated in such a slight way that I thought I had imagined it. And then a sound, one I'll never forget. A short, low, childlike breath, pressed against the crack in the door. My body froze. My hands started sweating so much that I had to lean on the sink to avoid falling. I tried to speak. "Is anyone there?" But my voice came out faltering, trembling, in a tone that sounded childish, as if it weren't mine. Silence answered. Total silence. A silence that seemed to observe. I mustered my courage and pulled the door open forcefully. The light flickered once more, and the hallway was empty. But something had changed. The feeling that I was being watched from below, very below, became clearer, as if someone was crouching on the ground, waiting for me to turn my back. That morning, after trying to sleep and failing miserably, I lay on my side on the makeshift mattress in the living room, and from where I was, I could see the hallway door. It was only open a few centimeters, a crack, and behind her, I saw movement. Not a body, not a hand. A low shadow darted by quickly, as if someone were running from one side to the other, but crouching, I held my breath. The shadow passed by again, and another one, faster and faster, closer and closer, to the crack until it stopped. And at that moment, I felt as if two eyes, but eyes very close to the ground, were fixed on me through that opening. I pulled the blanket up to my face, trembling, unable to look back. I closed my eyes tightly, and at the exact moment I tried to sleep, I heard 3 soft taps on the wooden floor, inches from my head. Loss, loss, loss. As if someone were touching the floor with their fingertips, looking for me. I kept telling myself it was tiredness, stress, imagination. But when the house starts responding to your thoughts, when it makes a point of reminding you that you're being watched, you learn that there's a fear that you can't rationalize. The next day, I woke up with a sore neck. She must have slept curled up too tightly, avoiding the view through that crack. The morning light streamed in through the windows, and for a few seconds, I almost believed it was all a result of broken sleep. But the hallway still smelled like that. That mixture of old wood and wet earth. During the afternoon, I tried to occupy my mind. I made coffee, organized boxes, cleaned the basement, anything to avoid thinking about what I had seen. The autumn sun illuminated the entire house, and for a brief moment I felt safe, until the phone rang. It was Hank, the bricklayer. "We decided to come back tomorrow," he said. "That space in the wall, it shouldn't have been open for so long." The way he said it, as if he were worried about opening and closing, gave me a strange chill. I asked if there was any structural danger. He hesitated. "It's not exactly structural, ma'am. It's just better to leave it as it was." When I hung up, I found myself staring at the hallway wall. The dark opening was still there, now covered only by plastic and tape. And every time I passed by, I was certain that something was behind that makeshift barrier, something he didn't like being exposed. That night, the temperature dropped out of nowhere. My fingers got so cold they felt like they were sleeping. I wrapped myself in my blanket, back in the living room, trying to watch something on TV just to fill the silence. But the house, it didn't want silence to be filled. At 2:43 a.m., the TV turned itself off. The kitchen light flickered and went out. The digital clock froze at 2:43, and slowly, the smell of wet earth grew stronger. I stood motionless. My eyes started to tear up for no reason, or perhaps for too much reason. So, I listened again. No steps, no whispers, a drag, like tiny fingernails scraping across a wooden floor. Very slowly, very close. I couldn't move a muscle. My body felt trapped in an absurd tension, as if any gesture would draw attention to me. Gradually, the dragging sound drew closer to the doorway. The dim streetlights streamed through the window, casting long shadows, and that's when I saw it, a silhouette, squatting, too short to be an adult, too tall to be an animal. She moved slowly, like someone trying to imitate the way of crawling, but without quite knowing how a body should bend. The shadow crawled to the center of the corridor and stood there, still, tilted to one side, as if her head were too heavy for her neck. I pressed my lips together until I tasted blood. If I breathed, he would notice. And then, the silhouette did something that haunted me for days. She straightened up, slowly, like a child getting up after playing on the floor. But the movements were wrong. The joints were flexing at the wrong angle. The arms hung as if they didn't have enough bones. And when she stood up, even though she was short, she turned her head to the side, as if she were trying to hear my breathing. I almost threw up from the terror. I stood there, frozen, until the shadow lowered again and crept back into the darkness of the hallway, disappearing as if it had dissolved into the floor. For several minutes, I couldn't move. My whole body was trembling. My teeth were chattering uncontrollably. And I thought, if something like that manages to walk around my house, what else can he do? I only managed to fall asleep when the sun started to rise. But even so, I woke up with the feeling that something small and cold had run its fingers along the back of my neck during the night. I thought the worst part was seeing that thing, but the truth is, the worst part was when it started using me, when I realized that some hours of my life simply weren't mine anymore. After the incident in the hallway, my body went into a strange state. It was as if I was always tired, even when I wasn't doing anything. It was as if something was draining my strength without me realizing it. The next morning, Hank and Morales arrived early. I should have been awake when they knocked on the door, but I wasn't. Actually, I wasn't anywhere. I woke up sitting on the kitchen floor, my head resting on the lower cabinet, as if I had fainted there. The light was on, the coffee in the coffee maker was burnt, and my hands were covered in dark, almost black dust. When I opened the door for the construction workers, Hank looked me up and down and frowned. "Are you all right, ma'am? You look like you haven't slept at all." I just mumbled "Yes, I am," but I wasn't convinced by my own answer. While they were working in the hallway, I kept trying to remember my night, remembering how I ended up in the kitchen. But my mind only returned disconnected images, a sensation of crawling through a narrow place, the damp touch of cool wood, a muffled sound, like fingers drumming near my ear, and a smell, very strong, of wet earth. At the time, I thought they were dreams. Nightmares so vivid they left a sensation in my body. But in the afternoon, while I was in the backyard talking to Hank about the wall insulation, he said something that made my stomach drop. "Strange, isn't it? That plastic I put on yesterday. Someone touched it. Moved. What do you mean?" He was pulled into the gap, as if he had been dragged. I tried to laugh, to make it seem normal, but inside, I felt a chill tearing at my chest. When they left, the house was once again plunged into silence, and in that silence, I began to notice details that weren't there before. On the living room floor, tiny marks, as if dirty fingers had touched the wood. On the hallway wall, a thin scratch, like a fingernail dragging. And in the bathroom, the mirror was marked with something that looked like dust, and a drawing. It wasn't a clear drawing, another blur, like someone wiping their hand across the glass. But the shape, it resembled a hand, too small to be mine. That night, I set up a camera I had kept from the move, one of those simple, tabletop security cameras with night vision. I pointed it at the room where I slept and left it recording. I needed to prove that I was going crazy, or that it wasn't. I woke up at 4:12 a.m., feeling something cold on my calf. I turned around quickly and saw nothing, but the feeling of small fingers remained. Slept badly. I dreamt about the gap in the wall. I dreamt of something pulling me inside, trapping my arms, bending me over like a child trying to crawl through a tunnel. When the sun rose, I immediately went to watch the recording, and God, I will never forget what I saw. At 3:09 a.m., my body lifted itself off the mattress, without hesitation, without trembling, without looking tired. I didn't grow up like an adult. I stood up, supporting myself on my hands and feet, with my spine arched, like a child who doesn't know how to stand up straight. I moved silently down the hallway. My body was moving at angles I could never achieve while awake. He ran his hands along the walls, as if he were feeling his way along a secret path that only I knew. And when I got close to the opening in the wall, which was now partially open, I knelt down, and I looked inside. My movements were slow, almost curious, and before the recording became distorted, for just a second, my lips moved, and I whispered something that made my blood run cold. "Don't shut me in." The same phrase I had heard on the first night, except this time, the voice was mine. The following morning, the silence inside the house seems heavier than usual. Laura wakes with the distinct feeling that someone has spent the entire night watching her from the doorway. The room is cold, as if they had left the window open, but she checks and finds everything closed. Only the frigid New Hampshire air seeps in through cracks that weren't there before. She goes to the kitchen to make coffee and finds something that makes her freeze in place. On the floor, right next to the refrigerator, someone has drawn a human figure with charcoal, the same type of charcoal found in the scribbles inside the wall. But the proportions of the drawing are wrong. The body is that of an adult, the head that of a child, and the hands too long. Laura feels her stomach churn. She tries to call Noah, the contractor, to ask if anyone from the team returned to the house during the night, but the call goes straight to voicemail. While she waits, she notices something else. On the dining table is a glass jar, one of those she found in the old basement. The jar is clean, shining as if it had been washed hours ago. But what's inside shouldn't be there. A tooth, small, milk-based, bloodied at the base. Laura drops the pot on the floor, shattering it. The tooth rolls until it lands at her feet. She decides to leave the house for a few hours, to breathe. But when she puts her hand on the front door handle, she feels something warm on the other side, as if someone had held her from the inside moments before. She recoils. The hallway behind her seems narrower. The house seems smaller, suffocating. The phone finally rings. It's Noah. "Laura, I need to ask you something." "What happened?" she replies, her voice trembling. "Did you mess with our tools last night?" "Of course." A long pause. "The construction site cameras recorded you entering the first room at 2 in the morning. You were different, crawling, and repeating something." "Repeating what?" More silence. "He is teaching me." Laura feels a wave of cold run up her spine, but the worst is yet to come. Noah continues, "And there's one more thing." He speaks. "You left a message on the living room wall, written with the same charcoal as the drawings. What did I write?" The answer seems to come from very far away, as if the phone was submerged in water. "He remembers you." Laura hangs up, and the corridor behind her creaks, as if something small had just run through the shadows. The tension inside the house reaches a new point that night. Laura tries to keep all the lights on while reviewing the recordings from Noah's team, but each click of the mouse seems to echo like a hammer blow in the silence. The house, as old as the wooded hills of New Hampshire, seems to breathe. Creaks in the wood, slow creaks in the ceiling, as if adjusting its own body to accommodate her, or trap her. Noah sends 3 video files. She opens the first one. The image is grainy, but unmistakable. Laura crossing the hallway at 2:04 a.m. She's on all fours. Her knees don't touch the ground. Her feet flex like those of a crawling child, quick, almost misshapen. Her neck hangs to the side, and her head bobs in the same erratic rhythm as a poorly controlled puppet. Laura covers her mouth with her hand. She moves on to the second video. Now the camera is positioned at the entrance of the renovated room. Laura crawls into the frame, her fingers scratching the floor like restless claws. She slowly raises her head, revealing a wide smile, too childlike for an adult face. Her teeth are clenched, as if imitating the smile of a child in an old photograph, and she speaks. The voice is low, but clear. Aaron, Vem. Laura freezes. She's never heard that name before. She's never had any contact with a child named Aaron, but the way she pronounces it is intimate, as if the name were a secret between the two of them. She opens the third video with a mix of terror and need. In the recording, Laura has her back to the freshly painted wall. With a piece of charcoal in her hand, she writes with quick, almost convulsive movements. The words come out in crooked letters. He remembers you. He's still here. He knows your name. Suddenly, the recording shakes. As if something had rushed between the camera and Laura, a small shadow, short, the height of a 7 or 8-year-old child. Laura closes the laptop, but the echo of the recorded voice continues to reverberate inside her head. Aaron. The name vibrates within the house, as if it were ingrained in the old wood, the damp beams, the narrow corners between the walls. She takes a deep breath and decides to confirm something. Go to the narrow hallway where the gap between the walls was found. The hole is still there, now sealed with new boards, but one of them seems to have been pushed, slightly displaced. She crouches down to look closer and notices recent marks on the wood. Small fingers, pressing the surface hard enough to leave grooves. From inside the dark void, warm, humid air escapes, and next to it, almost inaudible, Laura. She stumbles backward, her heart pounding in despair. The whisper is anything but childish. It's rough, scratchy, as if the throat that produced it were in ruins. But the pronunciation is perfect. The whisper knows it. She steps back to the center of the room and notices something else that makes her tremble. The children's drawings they found between the walls, now they're appearing, outside, scattered throughout the plaster, the wood, and even the bathroom door. The same figure. Adult body, child's head, long hands. And beneath the last drawing, a new word written in charcoal, Aaron. Laura feels the whole house shrinking around her, as if the walls were closing in. Outside, the typical New Hampshire wind beats against the windows, but inside the air is still, heavy, suffocating. And then, the floor behind her creaks, short steps, quick, like the feet of a child running barefoot, but there's nobody there. Only the low shadow that crosses the hallway and disappears behind the bedroom door. Night falls over the small town of Conway, New Hampshire, bringing a layer of fog that creeps down the street like a living sheet. From the living room window, Laura watches the world outside slowly disappear, swallowed by a thick silence. Inside the house, however, there is no silence at all. There is breathing, slow, irregular, coming from somewhere she cannot identify. Determined to understand what's happening, Laura grabs a flashlight and decides to explore the basement again. The wooden stairs groan under her weight, as if protesting her presence. Down there, the air is damp and thick with that sweet, nauseating smell she noticed the day she found the jar, a mixture of mold and something organic, like rotting meat. She rummages through the old shelves. Nothing. But when you illuminate the deepest corner, you realize the floor has been disturbed recently. The concrete is cracked, as if someone had dug there with fingernails and hands too small to muster that much strength. Laura approaches, kneeling. The crack has marks, long, parallel scratches that form repeated grooves, as if a child had tried to get out of there, or get in. The flashlight fails for a second. A whisper emerges from within the crack. You promised. Laura recoils immediately, her back hitting the wall. The entire basement seems to lean towards her, as if about to close in. The voice, however, is not hostile. It is sad, wounded, and yet possessive. Suddenly, she remembers something Noah mentioned on the first day, that the house belonged to a family that disappeared in the 80s. An unsolved case, a child never found. The child's name. She forces her memory. Did someone mention that? She can't remember, as if a mental fog had been obstructing her recollection from the beginning. Laura runs up the stairs, stumbling on the steps. When she reaches the living room, she turns on her cell phone and starts researching the former residence. But the screen goes black. The phone dies, even though it has 70% battery. The house lights flicker 3 times, and then go out too. Darkness consumes everything, and then it begins. The steps. Those short, quick, barefoot steps. They circle the room, then the hallway, then the kitchen. Laura freezes, her breath catching in her throat. It feels like something is crawling along the walls, across the ceiling, sliding like a liquid shadow. The voice comes very close to his ear, warm and small. "Did you come to pick me up?" She points the flashlight upwards. The light reveals only the ceiling. But something rushes past the corner of her vision, too low to be an adult, too fast to be human. Laura feels a tug on the hem of her pants. Then another, like impatient hands trying to get her attention. A short laugh echoes down the hallway. Children's. That's absolutely wrong. "Aaron," she says for the first time, without knowing why. And that seems to please him. The whole house responds with a deep crack, as if the name were the missing key. The next instant, the flashlight illuminates a new drawing on the wall, one that certainly wasn't there before. A door, small, twisted, and right next to it, the phrase written in fresh charcoal, "Open it." He's waiting. Laura looks at the drawing, and then he realizes that the real door, at the far end of the hallway, the one that always got stuck, is now open. Just a little, enough for something small to have slipped through. The door at the end of the hallway never opened on its own. Laura knows this. She spent weeks trying to force that piece of old wood to move, and it always resisted, locked, as if the house refused to show what lay behind it. But now, the crack is there, breathing a darkness that seems to pulse like living flesh. Laura takes a slow step, and the air changes immediately. It gets colder, thicker. Her throat tightens as if she were entering a room filled with invisible dust. Before she even touches the doorknob, she smells something coming from inside, the same sweet smell of the basement, mixed with the damp odor of something stored away for too long, something that should never have been disturbed. She pushes the door open a little more. She moans, as if she were waking up. Inside, the room is absurdly small. It seems smaller than the space that should exist between that wall and the outside of the house. The flashlight illuminates an uneven wooden floor and, after a few seconds, reveals scattered objects. Old toys, a rusty metal toy car, a blue blanket folded in the corner, building blocks. Everything covered in dust, except for one object. In the center of the room, there is a child's chair, and she is facing the wall. For a moment, Laura feels the irrational urge to call out the name that's been echoing in her head since she heard the whisper in the basement. Aaron. But she presses her lips together. Something inside her begs her not to, as if calling him would allow him to get one step closer. Laura takes 2 steps inside, and the door behind her closes by itself. She freezes. The flashlight trembles in his hand. The sound comes soon after. Fast, low, dragged. Something is crawling behind her. Laura turns her body and illuminates the door. Nothing. But she hears the breathing. Weak, rhythmic. as if it were under the floor or on the ceiling, writhing in the cramped space between the beams. The light reaches the child's chair again, and now it's turned towards Laura. Her heart is beating so loudly it seems to echo inside the cramped room. There is something written on the wall behind the chair, revealed by the change in angle. Do you still remember the game? Laura tries to retreat, but the room seems smaller with each passing second, tightening her breath, the air growing thick and heavy. The sound of fingernails tapping on wood begins to spread, first on the floor, then on the walls, then on the ceiling. Hundreds of tiny fingers, impatient fingers. And then, a small, low, whispered voice, coming from all sides at once. You forgot about me. Laura tries to reach the door, but her hand can't find the doorknob. She gropes around where the wood should be, and feels only smooth wall, as if the door had never existed, as if she were inside a space that doesn't belong in the house, that never did. The air becomes warmer, like the breath of someone who is too close. The flashlight is malfunctioning. The sound stops, and for the first time, Laura feels the touch. Two small hands gripped her ankles with surprising force, pulling them back. She screams and falls to her knees, and looking down, for a single second she sees thin, abnormally long arms emerging from under the floorboards, as if the body were squeezed into the cracks in the wood. Childlike hands, yet deformed, gripping her with possessive desperation. Laura pulls her leg away with all her might, crawling. The wood scratches her skin. One hand lets go, the other doesn't. She feels nails tearing at her calf. Hot blood trickles down. She turns again to the back of the room, and now there's another phrase written on the wall, seemingly out of nowhere. You promised you would play forever. The flashlight goes out completely. His breath is in your ear, and the voice, clearer than ever, closer than any human should be. Stay with me, Laura. You're small now, too. Laura doesn't remember how she managed to get out of the room. In fact, the more you try to remember, the more you feel the memory slipping through your fingers, like a dream turning to smoke. She wakes up in the living room, lying on the cold floor, her face pressed against the floorboards and the metallic smell of her own blood clinging to the air. The pain in her leg is throbbing, a deep laceration, too long to have been made by human fingernails. The house is completely silent. For a few seconds, she believes it was all a hallucination, a nervous breakdown, exhaustion, stress, anything that doesn't involve small hands emerging from under the ground. But then she notices something on the coffee table. A tablet, connected, with the external camera of the house open, and the video is playing. Laura feels her body freeze even before touching the device. The video shows the entrance to the house at 3:12 a.m. Fog, silence, total darkness. But the door opens, and someone crawls out. The body is contorted, low, moving in a broken way, as if the joints were bending at impossible angles. The figure raises its head, just a little, and Laura recognizes her own hair falling across her face. It's her, crawling like a child, leaving the house in the middle of the night, and returning minutes later, carrying an old toy in his hands, a metal toy car. The same cart that was in the hidden room. Laura swallows hard. The video ends abruptly, but there's another notification on the screen, a clip automatically recorded by the hallway camera. She presses play with trembling fingers. In the video, she appears walking down the hallway, hunched over, her knees bent grotesquely, almost touching the floor with each step. Her head is tilted, her hair covering her face, and she speaks, in a childlike tone, a small, drawling voice that doesn't sound human. He doesn't want to be alone. He said I can be like him. He said I can come in. Laura feels her stomach churn. She doesn't remember any of that. Even worse, at the end of the video, The camera captures a small shadow running after her. Short, fast, with the perfect outline of a child, but with arms that are too long, almost touching the ground. Another clip appears as an automatic suggestion. She hesitates, but it plays. Now, the recording is from the living room, filmed a few minutes before she woke up there. Laura appears again, standing in the center of the room, completely still. Only her head moves, slowly, as if she were listening to someone speaking very close to her ear. Then she raises her arm and points to something outside the frame. The camera captures the gentle movement of a small hand emerging from the bottom corner of the screen. Small, yet deformed. A hand that shouldn't exist outside that space between walls. In the video, Laura smiles. A weak, empty, almost sleepwalking smile. And it says, "I remember the game now." He wants me to go back to the wall. The recording ends. The house creaks behind her. Laura feels the air change. The sweet scent fills the room again. And a child's laughter echoes very close by, so close it seems to vibrate on the skin. "Shall we play again? You promised me. Forever." The light flashes once, twice, 3 times, and then, for the first time, Laura sees what lives within the walls, not the face, not the body. Only the shadow, short, contorted, walking as she walked that morning, slowly emerging from the darkness of the hallway, dragging its long fingers across the wood, leaving deep marks like children's claws. The tablet's camera, still recording, captures everything. The last thing you hear on the recording is a small, breathless, pleading yet happy voice. "Now you're mine, and nobody will find you, because you'll fit right in here with me." The tablet screen goes blank. And finally, the house becomes completely silent. If you managed to get through this story, then tell me in the comments. Did you also hear the fingernails scraping against the wall? And before you leave, subscribe. Some doors only stay closed when someone keeps listening.